All right, calling the Planning Commission meeting to order, July 19th of 2022 at 7 o'clock. On the agenda is board member roll call, approval of agenda, approval of minutes for June 7th, municipal planning grant review and discussion with BCRC. The next steps to waste ordinance and lawyers' input with discussion on that. And then we're going to discuss possible changes of meeting time. If we want to do that, we'll do that at the end. And then any public comment and adjourn. So look for a motion.
I move that we
Accept the agenda.
accept the agenda.
Okay.
Thank you, Fred.
I second.
I knew what I meant to say.
And we're going to do the roll call at the same time as we go around, say your name, and then whether you agree or nay.
Agree to what?
And we'll Fred,
To approval of the
for
agenda.
the approval.
Aye, Fred Miller.
I, Megan Randall.
Aye, Stacy Boxer.
And I'm an aye, John Bashy. So now we can go to approval of minutes.
I can't.
I'm not
I
seeing.
wasn't here, so I can't
And what,
chime in on that.
you were in the Galapagos.
Yeah.
Where are these minutes?
I don't see minutes here, but
Emailed.
Are they not included in the packet?
No.
I don't see minutes in here,
If you want to circle back to it at the end, I can put them while you guys move on. And then I'll bring them
but
back.
could do that. Okay, come back to these.
So municipal.
Okay, so municipal planning grant. We'll get you guys right up here if you want. Come up and have a seat. And then for the record, just state your names.
All right, I'm Jonathan Cooper, Bennington County Regional Commission.
My name's Scott Grimlyon. I'm also with Bennington County Regional Commission.
Thank you for being here with us. So basically, we did get the grant to review. From what we were looking at doing is getting back on with proper, because it was taken out on our last round what we did. So we want to get some industrial land back where we could potentially put that. So that's what we're having you guys help us with. I think it shouldn't be too big of a deal to do this because we already had it in place. It's just a matter of making sure that those places were good still, I think is what our bigger look is. And that's what we're going to be asking you guys for is if we have those locations. We had picked out 5 locations. I don't know if you got a copy of that yet though.
Okay.
If not, I can make sure you guys get that anyway, but we were just as a board, we're saying, hey, these locations, the racetrack being one of them, hard gravel bed that used to be right across from the racetrack as you're heading south, to be on your left. The building from Mac Molding, that strip of land that's alongside of there. What was the other one? There was, and then we're down by where you go into Route 7 where the farmland is along.
Route 7
Or not Route 7, sorry, 346. Where we go into
We
New York
have
side.
really strong
So
objection to
That
that one.
farmland along there.
I did not
If
vote in
it's
favor of that.
feasible to do it, not that it'll ever become that, but if it's feasible, that's what we're, just to mark it out, so future. Keep thinking it was one more place too, but I'll have to look back at our.
Is this only for industrial?
Yes, because we had industrial here, industrial commercial is what it originally was, and when they did the new bylaws, that disappeared in the bylaws, so we were
We-
tasked to come back
It didn't really,
to looking for it.
I mean, I think I remember being on the planning commission at that time. I don't remember it as being like disappeared, like we discussed it and a lot of the racetrack is either unavailable or or in the flood zone. And, there's a lot of reasons why those places it wasn't just like, oh, we're just getting rid of all industrial. That wasn't the intent.
Well, it was industrial commercial as I remember it, but it was, that way I say disappeared, it was just that part of it was gone. Industrial just is not there when the new one was written.
Right, I think the project encompasses more than just industrial, right? I believe it's, what's this right here?
Economic development.
Mixed use, residential, commercial, and industrial.
Right. Yes, we had seen, so we were having conversations with Tim Darter during his time in the role, and it was in November of last year that I think the town submitted the application. And just, I think, as you know, there was sort of a lengthier timeline to the announcement that the application had been funded. And then, so the timetable for this grant from the state's perspective is things have to be done by November of 2023. Okay. And we're, I think in the RFQ that we responded to is that starting no later than August 1st of this year. So this was a good meeting an opportunity for us to come in and, just sort of talk a little bit about where things stand. And as we'd been looking at some of the criteria selection for these different types of use, the thought was that, all right, let's make sure that we have sort of a short list, if you will, of sort of up to 10 sites for that really meet the highest and best use would be something of commercial or industrial or residential or mixed use, so that we're able to sort of view the town through a series of different lenses, which was so much a part of the 2019 town plan that I know the town worked and you all worked so hard to get through, which is really sort of guiding a lot of what we're looking at. And in that application process, sometimes we were asked as Regional Planning Commission to assist, like, hey, what are some elements that would go into a good application for municipal planning grant funding, knowing that the MPGs are a really good way to keep momentum going in between those town plan updates. And so we were looking through with some town officials and town employees at sort of what they're looking at this year, what kind of, and how can we tie this to goals that are stated in the town for economic development that do highlight, the importance of, a town that has seen 64% of its jobs lost since 1990. We want to make sure that we're keeping a close eye on how we might grow that number, how the town can think about, growing that number and where it makes the most sense to do so. Knowing that there's a lot of different, a lot of eyes, new eyes have been looking at Pownell, looking at a lot of rural Vermont over the last year and a half. And I think at a time when there's opportunities for towns to maybe position themselves. I think it's been a long time conversation in all towns across, northern New England and rural New England. There's, I think, a really good chance to sort of take what we saw in 2019 with the town plan and sort of filter through a series, sort of look at the town through those sort of four different lenses. And so a lot of conversation with our work and with the planning commission, sort of like, how does this look? Does this make sense? Are we, in the ballpark here, et cetera? And really, I think one of the most helpful things for us is assisting with where there are parcels that are under consideration. There might be the case that a given parcel might really stand out for more than one, scenario that we're able to facilitate conversations that we can have with those landowners, so that we're not talking about things without the people, without their input and their sort of having those conversations, knowing this is not binding, but simply one of those things we want to be respectful of people's property and of their options and their interests. I think that as we had our conversations with Tim at the time, one of the other things that was sort of had not yet developed that has since come to fruition was the successful VOREC grant application, where I think Pownell is maybe $375,000 for some outdoor recreational activity. That was the largest award to a single town across the state. So there's one of the things that the application.
2019?
No, that was this was early.
Just recently.
Yeah, that was announced and it was at the time that the application was submitted, the town had been invited to submit a full application for that outdoor recreation grant. we didn't know at the time what the outcome was, but now, one of the things that they specifically ask about in the application has to do with other initiatives, other momentum. And so that's something that we may also be considering in light of that announcement and of that award to the town.
So the recreation grant, is that predicated on Pownell being rural, gorgeous, and, with a lot of woodlands and river and, I mean, or is it, are we going to get a lot of recreation if we have a lot of big industrial,
I think that application was specific to a certain area, where there'd be a town-owned land and maybe an access at a trailhead or something along those lines. Another one of our colleagues at BCRC, Catherine Briers, was a little more involved with some panel folks in developing that application. But the point being that that's also something that we'll probably be thinking about as we look at, sort of getting those maps out, getting acclimated to the parcels, what's here and what's sort of on tap.
Excuse my ignorance, but can you bring me up to speed? Like, what does your corporation do?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm happy to do so.
Okay, because I know nothing about this.
Yeah, so the Bennington County Regional Commission is one of, maybe a dozen or so regional planning organizations around the state. And our 14-town area is most of Bennington County.
State run?
So we are funded by the state, but we are a public entity. It's a political subdivision of the state. And so
We have a board of directors that's made up of representatives from each of the towns that we serve in the area. So there's board members from Pownell, there's board members from Manchester, there's board members from Rupert, all contribute to our overall
different towns and make suggestions as to what can be done.
They helped tremendously with our planning, our town plan.
Has a lot of regulations around plans and.
Yeah,
For
they
rural towns.
know what the regs are and how to streamline it.
Yeah, we're a bunch of people who've been trained in planning and economic development and other types of fields. And instead of working for, a city, as like the planner for that, we work for the county of Bennington.
You're using your expertise.
Right.
Not knowing the ins and outs of.
Yeah.
this. Okay.
Yes, and the thought was that here's so the BCRC staff member, Michael Batcher, had worked very closely with the town, a number of towns over the years on town plans, and Michael has since retired. And so he and I had sort of been working on some of the building blocks of this municipal planning grants application sort of conversation we were having with some town officials. And so as Scott and I have sort of picked up the ball and kept going. And the thought was that at first we didn't think that we were going to be moving forward, but then the state said, hey, let's get this one on, get this one going. So I think we had submitted the RFQ, responded to the RFQ last month, sometime in the middle of the month. And Tara was in touch a few weeks ago, a week or two ago, saying, hey, would you be able to make it to tonight's meeting so that we can sort of begin sort of, the process for saying, hello, here's the major, here's the overarching goals. Here's why we think it may be a useful, a good use of your time. And it's the grant itself comes with the project is 90% funded by the state and 10% funded by the town. So that's sort of the carrot for sort of continuing this kind of discussion.
So we have X amount of properties that are potentially available.
What we're looking at, yeah.
They're not town owned. None of these are
We
town owned.
don't know, and we have no idea whether, for instance, the farmer that everybody talks about building an industry on his land, whether he's under agricultural, what's it called,
What have you.
Current use, I mean.
Yeah, land use or, so some of these things are, and the people the people who own the racetrack are notoriously unresponsive, so.
And it's, so the thought is.
It'll be a
So we're coming up with ideas of what to do on properties that we don't even own or
So the thought is that knowing that
It's not so much that we're trying to come up with ideas for them to do on them. We're just trying to locate the lands that potentially could hold businesses in there. What I was asked to do from the select board is to find those locations that businesses could go into if we had a bigger business come. And it doesn't have to be, 200,000 square foot buildings. It's just, they're looking at where could a business go, where it could get.
Do we need to contact these landowners first?
Well, to look at the land and consider it for a certain use, I don't believe would require you to have any negotiation with the current landowner.
Except you should know what kind of land use they're operating.
There's really, he can either use it for that or not.
Right. It
You know,
doesn't
he
matter if
doesn't
they use
have
it.
to.
It's just that we're saying, this is the land that's available.
It's about identifying the areas where it's best to do a certain activity and then giving the town the tools to say, if anybody wants to do these activities here where we think it's a good idea, we're going to make the burden of you doing that much lower than if you want to do that there without us making this plan in advance.
You know, we obviously need, another set of eyes on this process because as a small town, we all have our certain preferences. And we can argue indefinitely about those things, like that piece of land.
There was another one.
We have another group
Yeah, I don't know.
looking at that. Take us right out of the picture of what we prefer, whether I prefer big factories or you prefer, little farms. It's irrelevant to the discussion of what that piece of land could serve as.
And if we can establish some good criteria of how it is to assess what stands out for this use, for this potential use, for this potential use, the criteria will outlast the contract for the work. And that's something that is, so as things shift or as and things change hands or as conditions change, there'd be a good sort of solid assessment of what, why, and where. And that's something that, I think is on the table for all towns. And the thought is given all the work that went into that town plan process and some of the goals articulated in the town plan to ensure that that residential and commercial activities are taking place in the best places for residential and commercial activities, to ensure that industrial activities are taking place in the best places for industrial activities. We want to try to flesh that out a little bit with our time under this grant agreement. So, and that was really what we thought today would be a good opportunity to do, is just to sort of have this conversation and go over those 30,000 foot, big picture goals, knowing that we'll certainly be, unavoidably getting to that small scale in the course of the.
It might be necessary or a good idea to define what a modern industrial use looks like.
Yes.
Because people picture smog, big chimneys spewing smoke, odors,
PFAs.
into the soil, into the groundwater, and noise and all that stuff. We picture that from what we've seen in life and in media. However, we're not all aware of what's currently going on with industry worldwide.
Yeah, certainly. So it's a good opportunity to sort of to get a sense of where there are, what are the modern best practices, how can we make the decisions, how can decisions be made with eyes wide open, right, and with sort of the best set of facts. But I know that there are many more conversations to come, but we wanted to sort of start it here. And the thought is that, with the, in that application, there was a timeline that sort of had a project sort of timetable that says, here's what we'll be doing and this and this and this. The timeline itself is a little shifted because we had a much longer lag before we could really begin. But that's something that we'll be following up with the Planning Commission. I think here's how we see the next few months, and now we'll have like periods for check-ins and opportunities to have dialogue in between as need be. But, a good opportunity to have public inputs, opportunity for this to then, when we reach a draft position of the draft report, get some public comment and feedback before we have anything.
So is your job to come up with the type of industry that you suggest to come in?
I don't, not quite the exact type of industry, but to sort of understand the siting criteria for those big buckets. If we're talking about industry, then things like transportation and, transportation infrastructure becomes important. Water and sewer infrastructure becomes important. So knowing what, where we don't want to be suggesting things that would require millions of dollars of town investments to create something that may not be the highest and best use of either the parcel or perhaps of town funds to bring that about. But we do want to present with a suite of options that the town may wish to consider, both in terms of the parcels that are here today and also the tools that municipalities around the state can use, drawing on federal or state funding to help build out make any sort of pre-treatments so that to make investments in whatever sort of outcome is most important to the town for whatever sort of use. So we wouldn't be getting, I think, to the level of this industry, this specific industry, kitty litter manufacturing or things like that. But I think that we would be getting to looking at where are village designations in the town, how are things zoned, and like what does that look like as we consider those things in light of one another. Something I maybe missing.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not our job to be like, hey, this is a good spot for a warehouse, or hey, this is a good spot to do kitty litter manufacturing.
My professor in grad school used that example, so
but we'll say, but you can say like, there's a range of types of businesses that use a certain amount of trucks, and this has good access to highways. This is a good opportunity for businesses that do that kind of thing.
With sewage and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Remember the old,
What's the carrying capacity for doing something like this, And then he's right, it's not just looking at that from like a sort of
what is it, I think,
environmental perspective, right? Like, I was thinking about like what impact will the
to have some.
business have on the town, but also looking at it like from the perspective of the town, what is the potential cost of prepping ourselves for a business like this if a business wants to come in here?
If we could find, I guess that's what our discussions in the future here are gonna consist of. Again, that's what I wanted to do, is try to get you guys here tonight just to kind of start this process so we know what you guys are gonna learn from us, what we're trying to get, and we're gonna understand what you're bringing to us. So, and that will, hopefully, like I said, get some of these places that are gonna be something there. If we have somebody come along, I think is our bigger thing. If we have them, they find these lands? If somebody comes and says to the town and says, we're looking to come into your town, what locations do you have? We want to be able to say, here it is. And it's still up to the person who owns it, obviously, to make their deals, but this is what we can do for you.
Currently, property in Powell is I would guess over 90% residential. There's there's very little industry or any very, very small economic development going on in Powell right now. This town historically has had an economy, and it has had a booming economy at one time. A lot of people miss that. A lot of people would like to have something in between, because there are certain problems that come along with an economy that's dominated by one form of industry or another.
I agree.
When you mentioned earlier that you've seen an uptick in interest in New England, is this, you're talking about COVID? The people want to, yeah.
And then
Is that still? That's, I just wondered what your what you were referring to, because I don't see a whole lot of, but Bennington's really coming alive again.
And the sort of knowing that some of the, for a long time, you needed to be in an office to have access to office software, things that people have begun to think more broadly about. Well, if I don't need to be right next to this high rise, do I want to be? I don't want to be. And so there's some flexibility or some increased mobility, I think, that maybe has fueled some of the wackiness, you might say, of some of the housing market activity for the last couple of years. But I think something that has come up also is that apart from that, I think prior to anything, in sort of pandemic, more and more towns were sort of involving themselves in what has traditionally just been the market decides what goes where, and towns attempting to put themselves in the position to take advantage of something or put themselves in the best possible light. And that seemed to be, as we had conversations with our executive director, Jim Sullivan, prior to this application going into the state, it mentioned that, that in his interactions with Powell, he was hearing a lot of those conversations. And if we were to, how would we take advantage of this, that, or the other? How would we put ourselves into the game? And that's something that I think we've had. I know I'd had conversations with other town officials from Pownell maybe 3 or 4 years ago on this topic. And so that's something that's, I think, been a long standing conversation, as you'd expect from a town that has such a legacy of economic activity, such as in the photographs opposite the wall where I'm sitting. And that's, and so that's really, that conversational thread is sort of a lot of what we're picking up on and wanted to put a little bit of a framework on with, so that we could help inform the conversation however we can. But was there anything, Scott, that I sort of left out with some of the?
No, I think that seems pretty good. Yeah, we're just trying to figure out what you can do to be attractive to the things you want to be happening, here in town, and we're here to be guided by you in that process. And this is just, the first meeting of a long process. Like that doesn't need to be handed in until, 16 months or something from now, right? So
we have a little, no need to use it all.
But I mean, but overall, we have this is just kicking something off introduction. That's the big picture so far as we see it, but give us what you guys, are feeling to help inform and steer the ship that we're,
I didn't get a lot of interest in the kitty litter. I don't think they're on board. So, all right, that would have made me.
We got a lot of kitties in town.
Anybody else have any questions from the board?
I did not get your last name. It doesn't really matter, but.
Sure, it's Grimm, like the Brothers Grimm, and then Lion, like the city in France. Grimm Lion.
Lyon.
Yeah.
Boy, that sounds fierce.
Thank you.
Lion.
And so I think Ms. Parks is was the point of contact, at least for the RFQ process, and I'd be happy to sort of stay in touch. And then we'll be in touch through her, and then we can come back to any sort of subsequent meeting just to check in or explain where things are. And we'll also be in touch if we have questions for if there was something that you wanted to make sure was on our radar or want to discuss or get any sort of clarification on.
Yeah. Are you guys gonna pull up those maps you're talking about? You're gonna kind of go over and review those locations and see what you think of those?
Yeah, I want to see what you came up with. Those 5 examples that you have obviously are a great starting point. I think the contract, like you said, calls for 10. 10 that you review.
Up to 10.
So we're going to go above and beyond that list, and we'll figure all that out with you guys.
One thing I would say about the town of Pownell is the easiest way to get the town fighting is to suggest one particular type of economic development over any others, precluding all others.
It's
Good to know. All right. You sure?
We've got a lot of, a lot of different it's an inclusive group of people, yeah. We've got a lot of artists, which, industrial people think it's a waste of time. And we have a lot of different types of people.
Yeah, we'll certainly be in touch with as some of that takes shape. That document you were referring to, I'm going to take a look. I think we may have a copy of it, but if for some reason we can't put our hands on it, we'll be in touch hopefully so we can have that as part of our sort of background, like that. Great.
Not a problem at all.
Okay. Well, good.
All right. I think
It's coming down.
we're rolling forward.
Nice to meet you all.
Thank you. Nice to meet you guys. We'll be in touch.
All right.
All right, so let's move on back to our minutes. We have our minutes from June 7th, 2022. Skim through those.
One change, we called order. It was John Bashy that called it to order, not Mike Gardner.
Do we?
Yeah, I was wondering what's Mike Gardner doing?
Actually, I don't
Was he
think we can
subbing
still-
for you or?
Yeah, I don't think we could still do this. There's only three of us here.
Oh,
Stacy
okay.
wasn't here, so
No.
there's only three of
okay.
us, we need four, so
Put that,
we're gonna have to postpone that.
Okay.
Yep. Put that on.
table that for the next.
That's tabled to
So
the next one.
then, following up on putting ourselves in the best possible light. Now we're going to discuss, right, the solid waste ordinance, is that what we're
Yes,
calling
yeah,
it
we're gonna
now?
move on to what next steps of the ordinance and lawyer input and discussion.
So my reading of and I read it earlier, in the email, which we all got, is that the lawyer said that everything looked in the ordinance looks okay and enforceable. And then he said the thing about, I question whether it would get lost if the thing about the tag sales becoming permanent and junk never getting picked up. He said it's in there, but he feels like maybe we should make a separate ordinance. And I don't see why. I think making a separate ordinance of that tag sale stuff would draw more attention to it than we want. And it would also, it would just take more time. I think we've been stalling and just dragging our feet on this. And just from my experience, I'm known as the garbage lady. Some people call me Stu Park calls me the angel of Mount Anthony because I pick up so much trash along there. And I like that title, but I'm the garbage lady. And people come up to me and they talk to me and they ask me, what are you doing about Route 7?
When are you gonna pick that up?
That's I'm not allowed up there. Thank God. Because, when I'm gone, anyway. So the lawyer said it all looked fine. I think we just run it
Well, I
through.
thought it was out of our hands and it's the select board.
Well, I
to
recommend.
Send a letter. I think they had to do a public comment.
Yeah, well, that would have to happen anyway.
Yeah, they gotta go, they have to have a couple public
But
meetings.
you understand what I'm saying? Why have,
Anybody's going to show up for that?
well, we'll see. Usually they don't.
I think somebody will show up for it. I mean, all it needs one person to show up for it, but if nobody shows up, it's a public meeting. If people don't come out for it, it's on
Well,
people not coming out.
The question that I think is, to me, at least that we could recommend that we just leave it as is and go with it. Now, he did send an ordinance from, I think he said Brattleboro.
The town of Brattleboro.
And so you could, you could be much more formal and sort of attach this to the current one or we could just, he said it's enforceable as it is. So why mess with it? Why separate it out? I don't see that. I don't see the point of that. I think what I'm saying is I hear people clamoring.
Well,
to get
I think
town cleaned
that was
up.
our goal, is to get something moving. So
Yeah, well,
If
I mean,
it's-
is the
in my
more
view,
we
too, if
separate
it's-
it out and slow it
I
down.
could understand if he said this is no good, you need to.
Yeah,
do
no,
this.
but he said it's
He
fine.
said it's fine, so let's
So
go
it
with
is,
it.
it's just his instincts as wanting things to be in this perfect order, because he's, because that's his job. But it still fits under the ordinance that we have now. It fits fine, and what's wrong with it? Let's just go for
He
it.
included that because we felt the need to include that.
Yeah,
Why did we feel the need to include that? That's what we need to just kind of like reflect on a little bit.
we felt the need to include it.
Is that
because-
happening a lot in town
No.
or not? Okay.
Well,
So,
we know where it is happening.
right,
and
and I think that's a good reason to be a little bit cautious.
But he didn't say
Right,
anything like that.
Right.
And I think, Fred, that if you separate it out and make a separate ordinance, that'll really
You always-
bring us to the
You always
Supreme Court.
hear, you always
Sky.
hear when a law is created or something changes because of the actions of a few. And
Many.
it comes down on everybody.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think that the way it's written, we made it clear that we're not governing, overnight tag sales. We're not, making it hard for somebody to make a little extra money. We're not ruling on agricultural stands. We specifically said we were not doing that. We were, I just really, I just think we should get her done. I really do. I think people want us to.
And I'm not arguing to not get it done.
And are we talking about the original, with the way we had the last meeting with the select board? Had the changes that Bob had put in too there. There was a few changes that he had made.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah,
We're saying that's the.
That was,
rough-
accepted.
that's the rough
It was,
draft.
we've all compromised, we took junk out, and now it's all just about household waste.
And Mr. Fisher added the word junk back in his letter.
Oh, well.
Yeah, no, it is.
So,
Still
I
says
know.
trash around.
We didn't say that. We didn't say that.
We're talking about household waste.
No,
People know what junk is.
yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
good old Anglo-Saxon
Yeah.
English, That's all it is. It's nothing, people who are taking offense because they are defensive.
Right, yeah.
And well, maybe they should be.
But when some,
Maybe they need a fence.
when a rule is made that affects everybody, there's always going to be some that are saying, I didn't do it, so why does this affect me? They're offended by that, so we need to be aware of that, that's all.
Yeah, well, but I mean, you cannot please everyone, as we know through.
I just want to bring it to your guys' attention that before I got the email back from Bob Fisher, were you at the meeting when DRB had the same concern that Bob put in the edits?
The last meeting I was not at.
What, the one about like we might be excluding people who want to have a real business?
Yes, from Carl, and Carl brought it up, that the board kind of agreed that it might just having it in there, that language might be a little tricky, and that they would technically, if somebody wanted to have the business, they'd have to bring it to DRB anyway.
Yes.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, but they did have that same concern before Bob even replied.
But when we looked at that, what Bob had said, and we changed it a little bit, we tweaked it. And then we, and then we sent it to the lawyer, and the lawyer said it's enforceable.
Oh, Bob Fisher, I meant, sorry, not Bob Jarvis, sorry, I should have clarified that.
No, I know, yeah. And so I just think, we have to do something about this problem. It's been more than 20 years that this problem has been kicked down the road because everybody's afraid of offending someone. And, I don't like to tell people what to do on their own property either.
Ultimately, you're gonna
but
offend
if-
somebody.
If they're bringing my land property values down and, then they're offending me, So, I mean, it's bound to happen that not everybody's gonna be thrilled, But as long as it's enforceable, I think I think we should just run with it, get her done. People are
And I don't-
asking me, I hear about it because
I've
I'm the
heard a lot
garbage
about it
lady.
too. There's just a lot of people out there that
Yeah.
want to see stuff cleaned up, but I don't think the bigger thing is going to be about the enforcement of it. I think having the right people going out, going to be, which is probably most likely going to be our, either health officer or, zoning administrator, something like that, but.
I would rather not see any fines. I would rather just somehow clean it up.
Right, helping and discussing. I think
And
if
put
the
some
right
money into
person
it.
goes out, if we have the right person that does it.
Not fining
just-
people.
Right.
Right, what
It's
are we
that
gonna?
talk, just
How are we
to talk
gonna
to the
get
people,
money?
help
It's
them
like squeezing
understand
blood out of a
and help
turnip.
them clean up.
Yeah.
We can, there's things that are able to be done, not
Well-
say, hey, clean it up, fine it. That's not what we're gonna say. We just want to help them understand that we're trying to make things look better, more presentable, so people go through the town, they're not going, wow, look at this place.
Which they are doing.
Right, and
People
I've heard
make
that,
fun
I've
of
heard that
Pownell.
comment
We
many
can,
times,
we
so.
can, we can say honestly that we considered the lawyer's input and other people's input about possibly creating a separate ordinance. And we feel that right at this point, we might just go do it as it is.
Yeah.
No, no further edits,
Yeah,
just do it as.
Recommend just getting it going.
yeah. And
I think we're all pretty much on that.
And we also, we did recommend, and I would like to recommend it again to the board, to the select board. We had, when we were there, we said we would like them to put some money toward it.
Right.
We would like to
They
see
did say
them,
they're set some aside. so.
maybe a town truck that could be dedicated for that purpose or occasionally, or,
That stuff's not neither here or there right now.
Right.
Just, let's get this thing.
oh, yeah, all
Yeah,
I'm
we'll just
saying
get
is,
it moving.
when like if we're recommending, that's what we recommended, and we re-recommend, I recommend.
So we discussed it, we argued it, and
We don't need to vote on it. It's just gonna send it, just say yes to them and
Continue as is.
we accept it the way it is now. It was approved and I guess Hannah can recommend it back to them.
Things that the lawyer will, thinks it will work. So if it'll work, why do you have to have a whole separate
Right.
category? I don't get it.
it might prove that we do need to separate it somehow. It might prove
Well,
that.
it doesn't, he just.
No, it may. After it's gone into effect, there might be
Let's see how it goes.
a rebellion.
Do you think we'll wind up in the Supreme Court with this?
I think going forward with it, I think just if it gets approved, which I don't see an issue, I think it's gonna go through. With the approval, we're gonna let it start to play out and see what
Yeah.
happens. We can always go back and make changes.
Sure.
If there's something that's not working out so well in it, we can find a way of changing that little thing and.
We'll save this
We'll
one
go
from.
forward again, but
Brattleboro.
once it's in place, it's easier to amend it than it is to try to rewrite something new, so
Yeah,
we can
I
do,
would say if you start writing separate things for separate,
right, you're gonna have
then
one.
you're gonna have
a stack this big.
a book that.
and maybe in 2024, we'll maybe get some of this.
And is somebody that you're going to accuse of not cleaning up their property, are they going to read this ordinance saying, section
Some of them will.
2.4
Some of them
doesn't
will.
pertain to me?
Right,
There
and I
are,
had to go through how many of them, because we wrote 100 of them, so they have to go through and find the right one.
Well,
We're
when
gonna
we-
match what they're doing, that's,
When we
don't-
included that, it was covering all the bases that we could think of. So,
yeah.
all possibilities of somebody finding a.
Within
and
reason,
we still-
within reason, okay?
right.
Yeah.
And we still might have missed something along the way, so,
yeah.
but again, as it starts to roll, we'll be like, we can say, well, that's something we're gonna have to look at or not, so I think that's where we're
I'm
at.
kind of thinking somebody's not going to be getting a high-priced lawyer, to go after the town.
They
Fight
did.
this.
That's- Talk to me later.
I go there.
All right, so we're gonna send that back, and we'll have, probably, I don't know if we'll have to go to the meetings, but, we might get asked to come in to those public meetings again.
Oh, yeah, I want to go to this. So my question is, I know a lot of people who really want to see something happen. Do I try to get them to go to this meeting?
Oh, yeah, sure, absolutely. Whenever the meetings come up, just say, hey, listen.
The public hearing,
Yeah.
not a regular select board meeting.
Right, the public hearing one for that. When that discussion comes up, absolutely find out when it is, tell people. I mean, they don't have to come physically in.
I'll write something for them.
Well, I mean, they don't have to physically come in, they can be on there and just voice their opinion, whatever, it's not like they all have to show up.
They could also write a letter.
Right, it'll write a letter in, any of that stuff, yes, that'll go, any of that kind of stuff will help. It's just showing that if there's people supporting it and anybody that, if they're listening out there or people play this later, anybody that doesn't want to support it, say why and we can look at it, or the select board will look at it.
Yeah, right.
And see.
Is there a single select board email that you would send? Do you send it to the head of the select board, or is there a single email that people?
No, there's not a single email for them. What were you looking to send?
Well, if somebody wanted to send in their, Stacy was just saying people could send a letter, but if somebody wanted to send an email,
Yeah, Tara or me, and then we just present it to the select board at the
I think
meeting.
it says on the web town website, who to send.
Yeah, you can just send them to the secretaries and
okay, fine.
they'll send them out. They'll make copies. All right, so let's move on to discuss a possible time change if we want to do that. Everybody comfortable with 7 o'clock still, or would you want to change it?
6 o'clock.
To move earlier. I've heard, that's why I brought it up.
At 6?
Because we've heard.
I'm up at 4 o'clock in the morning, starting work at.
Oh, okay, I hear you.
And
I'm good with 6. I don't.
I've heard that. That's why I wanted to bring it up. I heard people saying.
Doesn't matter to me, I'm retired, so.
You should, we need to ask Michelle and.
Yeah, Hannah,
she's working.
could you send a quick email out to the rest of the board members on that? Just to let them know what their thought is on it.
Like you're awake now, though.
Oh, yeah.
Just barely. Maybe less coffee.
That's my bedtime.
But potentially 6 o'clock. There's 5 of us here sitting here pretty much. It's probably going to be 6 if that works for them, just to see. But
Okay,
there's
so
5 of us here.
let us,
Hannah, how does that normally work for you and Tara?
Great.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're both in 6 o'clock.
I'm sure that, the sooner the better for them.
Yeah.
You have a wife?
Yeah.
it's first and third, it still is first and third Tuesday.
Yeah, so the days will stay the same, unless something comes up or whatever, and we have to call them off for some reason or not have one scheduled, but, other than that, it would just be the time.
Cool. Okay, that's 6 o'clock with me.
And that would be good. All right, moving on, public comment. Anybody have a public comment?
There's nobody in.
Nobody? Okay,
I moved it.
well, that's works. And, make a motion to adjourn.
Wait. Oh, we
Or do you
decided.
have any other discussion from the board? Anything else you guys want to say or do? Nothing? I'm going to ask this too for our next meetings and stuff. Is there anything you're interested in getting on an agenda to discuss in here so we can make more things to talk about or?
So I don't fully understand this grant thing. Are we interested in bringing specific types of businesses into the town?
No, what the grant was for is just to help locate the lands that potentially could have the businesses on it. Again, in the past, we had just commercial land. It was zoned different ways. And then a lot of those zoning, during the last bylaw changes and stuff, it was all changed and we got villages now. There's three villages. So instead of one village and then everything else around it, different lots, different places people could put things, they kind of centralized those 3 zones now. I think we had a copy of that someplace here. We had to pull up.
So you're gonna have specific
But it's
places that,
places that would be able to
That
put
are zoned industrial.
zoned industrial, but how is somebody gonna even know about this?
Well, the idea behind the three village designations were walkable centers.
Walkable
You know,
center.
suggesting that there might be some shops in these little places where
Well, and I think we should still,
it used to be like
and
that.
we should encourage that as much
Oh, yeah.
as
Right.
industry.
And it's
We should
just
also
encouraging
encourage
business.
Cafes and.
Anybody that's
and
interested.
Grocery store would be
So there was a
amazing.
time that, because I was a builder before I got into the countertop business, retired, I was looking to buy the Moccasin property. Although going through the engineering thing, it looked like it was going to be a lot of money going into that. And the wetlands are like surrounding this thing. The building would be so small. I kind of want to I wanted to put up like 3 stores, like a Dunkin' Donuts, a Subway, you know, stuff like that. So that the town has, you know, a place for people to go for a cup of coffee. Stuff like that.
Anything like
Seems
that.
to work out there. I don't know what they're doing with the property. I know they keep listing it for sale.
Actually, I think it just sold, I heard, so, it's, Gardeners bought it, so they're guess gonna be doing something with it there.
But
But,
there's 3 properties in a row.
Yes.
Okay? Then you got the last one that has the flea markets that, you know, hardly is ever open. I think if all 3 properties got together and built something up there, you know, that would be nice.
That's a nice little business stretch, right?
Yeah.
Right.
There's a whole bunch.
And actually, the Moccasin thing, they own property across the street.
yes,
I mean, something like that could be good for the town, like to have a town welcome center, something like that. I don't know.
well, ideas, as far as what we're looking at doing with it is just locating it. That's pretty much all we're doing. So as far as somebody coming in, businesses, anybody who know people or want to do something, that's what it's about, is having a place that somebody's interested. Here's the locations that work best for it. As far as our town plan and that kind of stuff goes, it's going to work out. This is your best locations. And you can look at those lands, and if somebody can make a deal
I
on
think
them.
if we focus all of our properties in Pownell on housing, we're gonna help Bennington with their economic development. They're gonna get all their stores in Bennington.
Right.
And they're gonna draw all the money to Bennington. And in Pownell, you know, we need more than just housing in Pownell.
Yeah, we need-
other things. That's what we should want.
You need some small mom and pop stores.
Need growth.
Yeah.
And then you could, you know, build a small apartment buildings or stuff.
We need business people that wanna do small mom and pop type businesses. You know, we don't wanna attract big boxes, cause they're empty boxes a lot of times. That business model seems to be failing. The big box stores, you know, the Kmart's and the Olympia Sports and all these things are, you know, they're not working out anymore. But they got their strengths from buying power because they're big and everybody was going to them. So they were crowding out the small businessman. And I think the small business could come back, but you got to have people with ideas on how to survive in that type of an environment and want to do it. Which is, you know, I think ideal for a small town like us.
Right. That's the thing, just encouraging it. If it's, you know, it's on we can have it on our website, this town website, saying there's encouraging growth in business here.
So from your
we have
experience,
locations or
were you
something.
encouraged did you get any help from?
Yeah, well, I spoke to Mike and he said, we would love you to do something like this. And so, you know, I had the support of the town, but I still would have to get state permits.
Right.
And that's a problem. And it's an engineering problem because the wetlands are so close to the building.
It's interesting is that the state created that wetland.
Yeah, that was.
It blocked off the drainage.
And the state actually owns, I'm going to say about 15 feet from the edge of the road towards the building. So it's not even enough parking there in front of that existing
It
building.
started out as a drainage problem because they improperly drained when they put the highway through. And then cattails grew up in it, so now it's like a protected.
All of Route
area.
7 was in a floodplain, and that's why they built it up higher. And that's why most of it, you look down and it like drops off after it.
Yeah. Any of those properties could be usable with some fill, but being that it's a
So then I
wetland.
thought if I couldn't put up like a small shopping center that was big enough for 3 or 4 stores, maybe like a gas station that had, you know, something like a 7-Eleven, like a Stewart's. Something like that in there, a small gas station. But even that, I don't think there's enough room.
End of town would be great, to have a pump, a gas pump. It used to.
Yeah.
But it's like right now, you gotta go, if you wanna buy gasoline and pound, you gotta,
Another 20 years, it's all gonna be electric.
not my car.
I'll go pump it out of the ground myself if I have to. I'm not going electric. There's too many problems.
You're not gonna have a choice in 20 years.
Hopefully I won't be around in 20 years.
I'm not gonna
So
be.
the dog in your,
Yeah.
That'll be right.
Never know. Hey.
nothing to say.
All right, so if we could put something like that back on a schedule, we can still talk about those kind of things and how it can help promote it or whatever, we can certainly talk about it
I
here.
think Pownell needs a cafe.
We got one.
Whatever happened to the
We got the one
restaurant
at
that was
Blue
going
House,
into
the
that
Blue
house?
Yeah, the Blue
And then
House.
they got the permits and all, and then it
Yeah.
just stopped. The last name Smith, I
I think
guess?
Cody or
I
something.
don't know what's going on with that myself, I just found that out too.
Now they're painting the house.
I heard they're living in there now, not a restaurant, so I don't know, I haven't even seen Mike to ask him about it, but.
The restaurant industry, I think, took a bad hit when COVID came along.
Yes.
The owners
So
of that
it's-
property.
you can lose your shirt easy going into restaurant business, and it's like, it made it even more precarious.
Even before COVID.
Yeah, so now it's even more precarious.
Well, let's, I'm looking for a motion note to.
I move
adjourn,
that we
and get
adjourn
this
this
one
here
over.
meeting and
We'll,
Come
do
back
some
next
discussion
time.
for, we'll save the discussion for the next meetings.
Okay.
so moved.
Move, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Everybody deny. And it's over.
You think the select board will listen to us?